I get to it first, I got you mad. I guess that when I get to it last. Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. I get to it first, I got you mad. I guess that when I get to it last. Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. Going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up. Get it that I'm never going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up. Get it that I'm never going.
All right, Ernie, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me
Awesome.
on.
Yeah, I appreciate you coming on, taking the time here.
Of
Ladies and
course.
gentlemen, welcome back to the Closed Traffic Podcast. You just see me today. Unfortunately, Johnny is tied up, and he definitely wanted to be here. He wouldn't miss this for the world. But unfortunately, life gets in the way sometimes, and he will not be able to join us today, at least on the host side. He may pop in here and again in the chat, but the show goes on. We've got Ernie. You all know him as Big Ern or Flying with Big Ern from his YouTube channel and amongst the community. And he has graciously taken time out of his day to come on here to spend some time with all of us flight sim enthusiasts, real world aviators, wherever you fall in this bucket of aviation. He's here to spend some time with us, answer some questions here, and just kick back and have a good time. So, Ernie, I appreciate you coming on, man.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm honored to be on here.
Awesome. So, it's interesting. I think I stumbled across your channel, I want to say probably just as the pandemic hit, and a
Mhm.
lot of us were just, locked indoors, because there was really not many places to go, and it was really a time where aviation wasn't doing too much. And finding your channel, and I think later on the community came and saw your channel as well, and we were able to gain some perspective into all of the operations behind the scenes, and just how involved and how much you love aviation. And I think it was so awesome to see. And obviously, since then, your channel has grown tremendously. Um, I kind of want to start with what got you into aviation. Can you kind of walk us through this path for you and how you
Oh,
eventually
yeah.
got into commercial aviation and flying for Southwest?
Yeah, for sure. Man, it goes way back to my childhood. My father was in the Air Force. He was a maintainer on F4 aircraft
Okay.
out here at Luke back in the day. So I just remember I would go to his job once in a while. He had to pick up something. He was, he was in the later part of his career, so he was more of a supervisor out there. But I would go into his office, and he would show me the airplanes out on the ramp, and I'd watch these pilots walk out. And I'm probably 6 years old, 7 years old. These guys were giants, and
Uh-huh.
they got their they got the green suit on, they got their helmet bag, and they're walking out. And I thought, oh, that is awesome. I hear them taking off in the distance, and my dad was a big aircraft modeler, so he'd build model
Oh, okay.
airplanes. So I learned in very early on how to identify different airplanes because I remember seeing an F4 that he made and painted up and put in my room. And
Okay.
then when I was out on the flight line, I'm like, that's the same airplane. He's like, yeah, very good. And I just remember that was a
That's
defining
neat.
moment. So then I was always drawing them, probably more than I should have in class. While I was at school, I was drawing airplanes, but it started very, very early on.
Gotcha.
To my dad's dismay, I would cut down some of the model airplanes that he flew. I would commando my way up there, cut them down, and then fly around the house, like pretending I'm in the
Uh,
cockpit and seeing what it's like to turn and all that.
yeah.
So it started very, very early in my career.
Okay, that's neat. That's neat. So, did you want to fly in the Air Force, or did you always know you wanted to go the commercial route, or kind of when did that come about, that decision, that fork in the
You,
road, if you will?
yeah, sure. Yeah, I think everybody kind of goes through an evolution, right? Like I only knew the Air Force because that was what my dad was in.
Hmm.
And I didn't even, the airlines really, it was not a priority for me or even an aspect that I was even thinking of. I just wanted to go in and fly airplanes for the Air Force. So
Gotcha.
as I started going down the road of, getting older and then, okay, now I need to get my private pilot license, started flying with that. And I started being introduced to other folks. That's why I love the aviation community because,
Hmm.
it's so diverse that I was just thinking, hey, I'm going to get my private, and I'm going to go into the Air Force. I'm going to fly in the Air Force, and then
Hmm.
I have no idea what I'm going to do after that. And when I started getting my private, I was being introduced to like, I remember asking my best friend at the time, Brian. I was like, his dad was an American Airlines pilot, captain,
Okay.
I said, wow, man, how did he do that? And he was like, oh, well, he flew in the Air Force or the Marine Corps, and then he got into the Air National Guard or the Air Force Reserve, and got a job at American. I'm like, wow, it works like that. I had no idea,
Yeah, yeah.
So I think as I evolved going through getting my private, and I figured, I was wasting all this money just kind of flying my buddies around, and all my buddies were broke just like I was, and I'm like, hey man, can you spare a couple dollars for gas? And they're like, no. I'm like, all right, we'll go
We'll
anyways.
go anyway.
But but my parents were like, hey, you're wasting a lot of money on now that you have your private, just go and get your instrument. And my dad was always big on education, as far as, hey, further your education. Don't just waste money on
Hmm.
burning holes in the sky, although valuable with
Right.
getting your experience, but put it to good use. And so I started getting my instrument, and by this time I was in college, and
Okay.
I did it all on the side, and got my CFI, and I instructed my last year in college. And then I started learning about, I was in Air Force ROTC. I guess I should back up. When I went into college, I went to Air Force ROTC. Then I learned about the Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve.
Hmm.
Back then the internet wasn't huge,
Yeah.
right? So it was all kind of like word of mouth, and hey, there's this
Right.
thing called the Air National Guard and the Air Force Reserve, and
Yep.
I learned more about that, and I thought, wow, so I can fly for the Air Force, and I can have my a career in the airlines. That sounds wonderful. Yeah, I think I do that. So that started the journey, and it was a long road. A lot of challenges, but I
Gotcha.
eventually ended up at Southwest. So I would just to answer your question, I would say it was a building block approach as I
Okay.
kind of learned more about aviation and what was available in the space on what I wanted to do.
Gotcha. Yeah, there's a whole host of different ways, to take this career, especially nowadays, right? I
Correct.
think it's important for folks to know that there are different opportunities across aviation. It's not always the airlines, but that's what
Mhm.
a lot of folks kind of see and what they know and what they're most familiar with. Um, but
Right.
that kind of leads me into my next question here. We've got a group of flight simmers, real world pilots, just overall aviation enthusiasts here. And a couple of them have even actually started, their discovery flights and started looking into flight training. And some are just, wondering where they should even start, what they should be looking for.
Sure.
What advice would you have as it relates to, those folks going out to their approach to obtaining a pilot's license, whether it's from the very beginning, from a discovery flight right through that
Mhm.
check ride, figuring out, who the right instructor, the right school is, the maintenance program. Kind of walk us through what you think folks should be looking for as they go on that journey.
Yeah, like you said, Mike, there's several different roads to starting your training, but I think it all begins with that first discovery flight.
Mhm.
Going out to your local airport, and don't really worry about what flight school you want to go to yet. Find out if flying's for you, because honestly, it's not for everybody.
Yeah.
You may go up in the air and you find out, oh, I don't really enjoy this. It's not what I thought it was.
Right.
Or you get up in the air like I was. As soon as the wheels left the ground, I was like,
This
I
is
want to
what I
do
want to
this
do.
forever,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the first thing I would say is start with a discovery flight. Go to your local airport, and just sign up for a discovery flight. They range anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes of flight time, depending on the school.
Mhm.
But with that, I believe the schools also will try to sit you down and tell you kind of the path that they have at that particular flight school. But again, the important part is to get that discovery flight in there. They should have you fly the airplane a little bit up in the
Yep.
air, just so it introduces you to flying. So when you get down, and you're like, yes, this is what I want to do. Now the hard part begins, where you do your due diligence and starting to explore different flight schools.
Right.
And that can take, another long road. But the more you invest in picking the right flight school, the better your success rate will be down the road.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. Is there, once they kind of gone through that initial discovery flight, and you're spot on. I remember my initial discovery flight, I actually felt sick coming back
Yeah,
down.
right,
We did a bunch of steep turns and whatnot before I even knew what all that stuff was. But the
right,
instructor was putting me through the paces and some of the obviously the air work that you would have to know as a private pilot. And I didn't feel too good coming back down. And I
right.
went home
Yeah,
and wondered, man, I don't know, this is actually for me.
right.
But I mustered up and tried it again a couple of months later, and I felt fine. And I think part of it was I didn't eat. So you always have there's this
Yes.
misconception that, you don't want to eat because you don't want
Yes.
to throw up, but then you
Right.
realize you actually have to eat to not throw up,
Correct.
right? Because,
Correct.
you obviously need to ensure you've got food in your stomach. Flying an
Right.
airplane takes a lot of work, both mentally as well as physically. But again, you don't know that going in. You kind of learn that,
Correct.
after the fact. But you did mention, finding the right school, finding the right instructor. What is it? I think that instructor student relationship is extremely important, even beyond the right school, because I think you can have a great school, but you get that one bad instructor or that instructor that isn't right for you and your learning style, it can create a bad experience for you. So what do you think, folks should be looking for in an instructor, if you will, as it
Sure.
relates to, pursuing their flight training?
Yeah. Now, Mike, let me back up 1 second. You said something that really hit me. How your discovery flight, you started feeling nauseous.
Yeah.
That happens to a lot of people. Don't let that dissuade you. Just like you, Mike. Hey, I'm going to hit it again. A lot of times people go up on a discovery flight and they get sick. It's normal. The CFI should know.
Mhm.
Kind of if you're starting to not feel well, to tone it down. But
Right.
don't let that dissuade you from a career in aviation, because everybody got sick. I got sick when I first started flying. And your story of not, eating, you don't
Yeah.
know any. But when I first started getting my private pilot license, I would not eat, and it was like 4 or 5 hours of not eating, flying, doing steep turns. So I
Yeah.
would get sick
Yeah.
all the time until my instructor said, "Hey, what are you eating before we fly?" And I said, "Well, nothing. I don't want to get sick." He goes, "No, that's wrong." So I didn't
Yeah.
know, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyways, I just wanted to tie the loop on that. That's a very important fact, and I don't want that nausea to
This
dissuade
way.
anybody from a
Yeah.
career in aviation, because it's normal and it does happen. Your
Hmm.
body adapts to it, and
Yep.
that gets better.
Yep.
Okay, so flight instructor. I always think when you evaluate a school, so obviously my daughter's up at UND right now, and she's finishing her flight training up there.
Okay.
But what we did is depending on which road you want to go to, there's the university path. If you're just getting out of high school and you want to go through the full university path, there's another path of getting all your ratings outside the university at a normal
Hmm.
flight school, or they have these career flight schools that take you from private all the way up to your CFI. And then there's the mom and pop. I was a mom and pop kind of flight school guy when I
Hmm.
first started flying. So I don't think I to your point, I would put the focus on the flight instructors. And what I believe is, what is the culture like at that flight school?
Yeah.
And what kind of instructors do they produce? Because obviously leadership at the top will dictate your culture.
Right.
How do they support their instructors? Do their instructors feel, you know, they can call it knock it off for any kind of safety issue?
Hmm.
Those are the kind of things I would look for. And the flight school that you choose to get your ratings most likely will be the flight school that you learn to fly in. So the
Yep.
flight school that you find that fits you, your personality, your desire for the culture that's around there, is probably the flight school that you're going to end up
Yep.
being a flight instructor at. So, um, but we are humans. Personalities are all different all the way
Yep.
around.
Indeed.
And flight schools with numerous flight instructors, they have protocols to where if a student isn't necessarily getting a subject, they can audible to another flight instructor.
Yep.
Or if you have a personality conflict with a flight instructor, that flight school, if they're really watching their students, can pick up on that and move that student maybe to another flight instructor.
Yep.
So happens all the time. It's not it's not a derogatory thing by any stretch. It's just, hey, maybe you're not gelling well with this flight instructor and you go to this flight instructor.
Yeah.
But to find out the right flight instructor, you got to find out the right school.
Right.
And the only way you're going to do that is by going up there, not just talking to, you may be talking to the owner of the flight school or some of the flight instructors there, but talk to the students. Those are your biggest value of finding out what kind of flight school it is and how they like it and what are some of the things that they could improve if they had the chance. Those are
Indeed.
good insights that you can find about finding a good flight school.
Yep. I did a lot of that here for sure. Also, DPE availability. It's something that you don't really look at till you're much further in. But I think that definitely, depending on your goal and when you want to be completed by, DPE availability for the flight school also weighs heavily, I think, or
Correct.
a good part of the decision making there. What that network looks like and whatnot. So that makes sense.
And I will say with the DPE availability, that is important.
Mm-hmm.
But be careful with flight schools that say, well, our DPEs are 2 weeks out or whatever because we only use these group of DPEs.
Mm-hmm.
You should be able to go take your check ride with anybody.
Yep.
If there's a DPE that's available, you should be able to, within reason. I mean,
Right.
we all know that there's the 1% out there that you may not want to take a check ride with.
Right.
But if the DPE is fair and judges exactly the way they're supposed to, you should be able to take a check ride with any DPE. So, and the fact that you can take a check ride with any DPE should open up the pool of DPEs. So don't just go to a flight school because they're like, oh yeah, we have 100% pass rate, but we only schedule with this DPE and he's, 6 months out from your check ride.
Exactly. There's a lot of that going on out there.
There is.
Spot on. At the end of the day, they should all be, grading you or examining you by the ACS. So
correct.
That's spot on.
And that flight school should be teaching you to the ACS.
Exactly.
Right? So again, as long as the flight school is sound with their syllabus, they should have a syllabus.
Right.
And as long as they're sound with, their practices and their standardization with their flight instructors, you should be able to interchange flight instructors with no problem. Those are some of the little things that I would look for in picking a flight school.
Got it. Perfect. Guys, welcome. We are on with obviously Ernie. You all know him as Flying with Big Ern on YouTube and across the aviation community. We're just here, man, just going through some topics as it relates to aviation. We went through, kind of how Ernie has gotten started, some of his examples around flight training and what you all should be looking forward to as well. Another topic we had here, Ernie, is, and we've heard this for quite some time now, for many years, right? There's a pilot shortage. And usually there isn't a lot of context or details behind, okay, what does that pilot shortage mean? And then, it kind of went away when COVID hit. We didn't really hear about it too much, right? And then obviously, demand for travel and air travel came back roaringly. And then we hear again, there's a pilot shortage. You see United just opened up that, I think, Aviate Academy to help kind of defeat the pilot shortage, right?
Right. Down the road.
As someone that, oh, really? Oh, that's right.
Yeah, that's right down. Hey, but I do have to plug 225 for my company, Southwest. We have a flight school right down the road too. So.
Awesome. And where's that again?
It's in Falcon Field, Destination 225, and it's hosted through CAE. Up in Falcon.
CAE. Okay, got it. Well, you guys heard. I got to plug them. Of course. But yeah, pilot shortage. As someone that obviously works in the industry, but not only works in the industry, you not recruit, but you interview for you're part of the selection process for candidates for your airline as well. What does that pilot shortage mean to you, and what are you actually seeing out there as it relates to that?
Yeah, the pilot shortage has been, brewing ever since I started, 25, 30 years ago, right? You've always heard about this pilot shortage. And I think that can mean a lot of things to a lot of different people. Some people have the aspect of, well, we're just not paying enough to pilots. That's why there's a pilot shortage.
Yeah.
and some others say, this is totally real. We can't find pilots right now. Yeah, I think, I have to go back. I'm kind of a dinosaur in the industry a little bit. I get into the dinosaur age, I guess. But uh, back when I was flying, I hate using that term. Back in my day,
Back in
but
my day.
back when I was flying, some of my friends that went off to regional airlines were getting paid $12,000 a year to start.
Wow.
So it was insane back then.
Wow.
But you have to remember that, we're all kids. We were, 18, 19 years old. I remember
Yeah.
throwing footballs to each other before another flight while we were waiting for more students to come in. I mean, we didn't have any money, right? So
Right.
when we were probably making $7,000, $8,000 a year,
Hmm.
and when a regional airline offered 12,000, well, that's a step up, and
Yeah.
I'm building my time towards my ultimate goal.
Right.
Now, like for instance, my daughter is going to go to an airline that's probably going to pay, a very nice wage to start,
Hmm.
and that's just the way it is,
Yep.
because there is limited access to pilots, and because pilots take so long to create, there is a lag in that. And in
Hmm.
order to make up the lag of that shortage, they have to start offering bonuses. Although I will caution people, don't just go after the bonus. Look at your prospective airline that you want to go to, whether it's a regional, whether it's a corporate outfit, whether it's a fractional. Look at it and really understand their business model and their culture around there. Again, we go back to the culture on flight instructing. I think that goes through everything that you do in life. You want
Yep.
to be at a place that respects you, that gives you the tools you need to be successful and run a safe operation, regardless of what that is. So, as far as getting back to the shortage, right now the competitive times are going down.
Mm.
And you're right. I not only interview, but I also recruit. I think my job as
Okay.
being part of the hiring team is to go out and to recruit folks to come to my airline. And I have to, I always go back to football, right? Like, I am a recruiter. I want you to play for my team. And
Right.
that's kind of the mentality that I have on it.
Okay.
Because there's a lot of people out there and we're recruiting for talent,
Hmm.
it's just the fact it takes so long to create someone to get into the major airlines that we're all out there. All of us, American, United, Delta, FedEx, we're out recruiting hard to get talent because that pool is shrinking and shrinking.
Mm.
Um, so is there a shortage? I think if you look back historically, there is less pilots now available than there were 2, 3, 4 years ago. And that
Wow.
that pool is going to get, we're all fishing out of the same pond. So
Right.
the
Yeah.
number of fish in that pool are starting to get smaller and smaller because we can't produce them fast enough.
Yep.
Uh, so I guess to answer your question, there is kind of a shortage going on
It's
right now,
there.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
it's
there.
brewing. Yeah,
Yeah. It also it kind of ties back to what we were talking about with flight training and finding the right school and the right instructor. This
correct.
shortage also creates a vacuum back that way
It
because you've
does.
got these instructors that are trying to build time and go to the airline.
Mhm.
For me, I had 3 instructors during my training leave for the
Yeah,
airlines, and it was,
right.
at the end of the day, I get it, right? They're
Hmm.
they're trying to go and achieve their goals and whatnot. But it was
Yeah,
tough because for me personally, how I learned is having that personal relationship with
right.
my instructor and whatnot. So it was tough. I got it done, but it was tough to kind of find these different variances and different ways how, about, how people instruct and how they teach and how they
Right.
expect things to be done. So this shortage at the airline level also, I think, creates that vacuum at the instructor level as well. So that's probably another thing, another area that you want to look out for as it relates to,
Right.
going about your flight training and finding the right school and the right group of instructors as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, I think you're spot on. That's kind of what we've heard, through the
Yeah.
community and through the world, that there actually is this shortage. So
And again,
makes sense.
I speak for myself, right? I'm not speaking for my company or anything like that.
Right, of
That's
course.
just my
Yeah.
anecdotal view on things right now on how I'm seeing our pool
Hmm.
of candidates out there is just shrinking. People are getting job offers. It's a competitive environment, which makes it exciting for those that are coming up, through
Oh
the
yeah.
chain. I'm always talking about, hey, this is what's happening out there right now. Get yourself ready, put in that hustle, put in that work, because, as that pool gets drained and you're building your experience, you're going to match and you're going to get probably multiple job offers because everybody's competing.
Gotcha. No, that makes sense. There's Johnny. There you go. How you doing, man? We miss you, man. We miss you on this side. Hope everything is going well over there. All of you, thanks for joining. Appreciate it. We are on with Ernie here, flying with Big Ern, as you all know him. Just walking through some of the aspects of aviation and trying to get you all some tips and some of the questions that you all have posed over the last couple of weeks. Ernie is here answering them and spending some time with us. So I appreciate it. So on the recruiting front, you mentioned that you recruit as well as are a part of the interview process for your airline. Um, with it being so competitive, what is it that you think candidates, for those folks that have met the minimum time and the minimum requirements, right, to even apply, what is it that you think they should be doing in order to stand out, right? Within your team or just the airlines in general when they're going for that interview.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of it, we're hiring pilots, right? So we want you to be the best pilot possible. So when you're going through your ratings, you're going through, and it's okay. Look, I failed my private pilot license. Failures do happen. It's
Mhm.
what did you do with that failure and how did you move on? So speaking with that on that topic, as you're going through your ratings, obviously don't fail. Try to be the best that you can and learn the most that you can. And then once you get to your regional or your corporate outfit or wherever you're at, start looking for some of those positions that kind of set you apart, and give you, again, additional knowledge, additional learning,
Right.
whether that's in a safety program, whether that's becoming a check airman, that you've attained such the knowledge base that your company feels, puts a lot of responsibility in you to teach the future pilots that are coming in and ensure that they're holding the standard. So those are the things that kind of stand out, working in
Gotcha.
safety, working on an SMS program, becoming a check airman, chief pilot, kind of those things. But I say that to say that you need to focus on your flying first and foremost.
Hmm.
So I had these bows, and man,
No
I guess
worries.
my ears keep falling out.
No worries. So okay, that makes sense. So
Yeah.
that kind of, again, most of the community in the group here are flight sim enthusiasts, right? We
Sure.
we
Yeah.
fly in addition to, some of us here flying in the real world with our private pilot license and instrument ratings and whatnot. We also fly simulators.
Hmm.
So the community wants to know, does Big Ern fly flight sims?
I flew sims before I can start, remember way back when I was, just getting the bug for aviation. I would get, uh, I forgot what it was called. I think it was still Microsoft Flight Sim back then too.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
I would fly that around and get different airplanes, and there's all these different flight simulators out there. And I did it a lot when I was younger, and I
Yep.
really believe that that helped me as I transitioned to flying, and getting my private pilot license. It just kind of gave you a little bit of air sense and just, that
Yeah.
hand-eye coordination.
Yep.
And from what I've seen lately, some of the flight sims are amazing. The
Oh, it's
graphics and
phenomenal.
everything on there. Yeah, I
It's
have not flown one yet, but
uh-huh.
I definitely I have seen them and I've been in awe it's really cool what technology has done.
When you get a chance, check it out. I mean, when I tell
Yes.
you that you can, with a lot of these desktop simulators today, a lot of these add-ons, and the community will know what I'm talking about as I drop names here. But with
Mhm.
the Zebo and X-Plane 11, PMDG, that I think actual real, line pilots actually, go in and study some of the systems and whatnot
Sure.
in advance for their sim check. It
Yep.
is it is it is as close to the real thing as we've ever seen
Wow.
historically. I mean,
Yeah.
watching your videos, and a lot of these folks can attest to this, all of the things that you're doing in the cockpit and setting up and whatnot, you can simulate it here today with a lot
Oh
of
no.
these desktop sims.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And in addition to that, there's this added aspect of air traffic control as well.
Yes.
It's no secret that one of the hardest things for folks as they transition into the world of aviation is trying to talk to air traffic control, and this fear and
Hmm.
this anxiety before you hit that push to talk button. We've got
Hmm.
things like Pilot Edge and VATSIM, where you're talking to actual real world air traffic controllers
Oh
that
wow.
are simulating the real procedures,
Hmm.
the SIDS, the stars, everything by the book. So I think flight sims have come a long way. And I know for me personally as well, for a lot of folks here that have their license, was a big, a big reason as to why we were able to kind of go through and be successful. I think
Hmm.
it's something that someone should definitely take a look at when they're first starting
Yeah.
their flight training, if they're not into flight sims today, because
Hmm.
it does really have, adds that level of perspective that you wouldn't normally have, coming in totally fresh, especially as it relates to the air traffic control front. So I think that's pretty cool.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, I think like you said, that's a big part of learning to fly. Okay, not only are you trying to control this airplane hurling through the sky, right? But now you have
Yeah.
to follow the directions of air traffic control. So that's another plate you're spinning, I call it, right? You're
Yeah.
spinning the plate of, okay, what did he tell me to do? Oh, okay, don't crash. You got to keep the airplane upright, and you check your airspeed and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
You throw ATC in there. That's why typically we don't throw ATC into, new pilots as they start. We gradually feed it in
Right. Right.
because, that is such a big aspect. And having an ATC simulator like that is huge. That's great.
Yeah. It's
I wish I had that back when I was flying.
yeah, a lot of folks, say the same thing. Again, Johnny, who's here in the chat, he was a commercial pilot as well, and he says the
Mm,
same thing all the time. He's obviously an avid flight simmer now as well. He wish he had some of these tools at his disposal when he started his flight training back then. A lot of
sure.
people say the same thing. I mean, you're literally able to, we talk about in the the aviation world when you're going to get your license, this whole aspect of chair flying. This is like taking
Correct.
chair flying to the next
To the
level. I mean,
next
you
level.
actually have
Yeah.
the
Ah,
simulator, you can look outside and
yeah.
do your actual VFR flying, your pilotage, your dead reckoning. You've got
Right.
air traffic control. You can pick up VFR flight following, everything that. Yeah, I mean,
Wow.
ForeFlight even has an add-on to the
No
flight
kidding.
sim where you can use it. Yeah, before I fly it to any new airport, I fly it in the sim at least a couple days before
Yeah.
the full on in the 172
That's
with my
awesome.
ForeFlight with air traffic
Yeah.
control, and it really helps because it gives me this added perspective and this situational awareness that I wouldn't have had going into it fresh.
Right.
So I think it's awesome. It's awesome, guys. Welcome in. The community's excited about this, man. Guys, thank you for joining. We've got obviously Big Ern, Flying with Big Ern here, joining the Closed Traffic podcast today. We're just going through some of these questions here as it relates to aviation and kind of how Ernie got started and some of his tips for you all that's looking to pursue a career in aviation, whatever it may be. Again, we talked about doesn't have to necessarily be the airline, but there are plenty of other opportunities out there as well. Um, so kind of now, Ernie, going through, you've gone through your discovery flight and
Mhm.
picking the right instructor and picking the right school, and you've gotten to this point where you're now getting ready to take your check ride, right? The infamous
Mm.
check ride with both
Oh yeah.
the oral and the practical.
Hmm.
What tips do you have for those folks that are getting ready to go into a check ride? I think it's one of the most daunting experiences that you
Right.
can
Yeah.
have,
For sure.
especially at the private pilot level. I know all of them are,
Mhm.
gets
Yeah.
your butterflies in your stomach, but definitely the private pilot one because it's your first check ride.
Correct.
What tips and just overall knowledge can you share with the community about going into a check ride?
Yeah. So the first thing I'll always say to any of my buddy Sam is getting ready to do his private pilot check ride. And I told him, you would not be signed off if your instructor wasn't fully confident that you can accomplish this check ride in a safe manner. So
Indeed.
know that, understand that, but also, yeah, you're going to be nervous. Um, I'm a big football guy, right? So I always think of Coach Saban when he talks about trust the process, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You have to trust the process. You've gone through this process of getting your private pilot license or whatever phase that you're in. You've gone through the process. The process is well traveled. As long as you put the effort in on every step of that process, you're going to be successful. Now, when it's game day, you're going to have game day jitters. That's just normal,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
But you've practiced this, in the case of private pilot, you've practiced these maneuvers over and over and over again that it should be getting to be second nature. So when
Yeah.
you do have those jitters, you know what to do. Your body knows what to do. Your mind knows what to do. It may be, a little foggy to start, but you'll snap right back into it. I
Yeah.
always say everything gets clarity when the football is in the air, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
your mind is clear and you can go attack. Same thing with a private pilot license. The biggest part of I felt when I was going through it was the anxiety leading up to the start of the private pilot check ride. Once it started and the game's on
Yeah.
and you're playing, you
kind
kind
of
of get
settle
into
in.
this, you settle in
Yep.
and it just works. So just be confident. Your instructor wouldn't sign you off unless he felt confident that you could pass the check ride. And just be confident in your ability to conduct a check ride because you have to trust the process because the process prepares you for the check ride. So,
Got it.
and again, a lot of people, like I asked my buddy Sam, hey, what are you worried about most? And he's like, I'm not worried about the flying. I'm worried about the ground.
The
the
ground everywhere.
I'm like, man, your airspeed 0 down here. I mean, you don't have anything else to worry about. I mean, that should be the easy part.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I get it. I get nervous about, every year I have to go do a check ride at Southwest, and I study the material and I try to get ready, and you get nervous before kickoff. But once kickoff happens, you settle in.
You settle in. Yeah, I remember that too, man. I was a basket case going into my check ride, and the oral, to your point, just as it got started, I kind of settled in, and then we got in the aircraft, and I think everyone, feels like they flew their practical horribly, right? Because very few actually fly it, by the numbers, and they can say, hey, I walked away feeling 100% confident that I nailed that. The oral, I felt like I nailed it. DP even said I nailed it. The practical felt like I had to, when we landed, I turned around to him. I said, I promise you, I fly better than this. And he said, listen, man, you pass, right? We're not looking for perfection up here, right? We're just looking to understand that you're safe and that you can actually execute the maneuvers. I felt like I did terribly. And I think that's something that folks can take away as well is, the DPEs aren't looking for perfection, at least not at the private level. You do these maneuvers to your point, to the point that them in your sleep, and you actually go up there and execute them. And the reason why you practice so much is because there is that margin for error when you go up there, that nerves kind of sets in and can kind of create that some of those things there. But settle in, and to your point, your instructor wouldn't have signed you off if they didn't think you were ready, and go nail it.
And like you said, Mike, the DPEs know that you're going to be nervous. This is your first check ride,
right?
So they allow some grace for that. They all know this is your first time, so they're going to do their best to settle you down because what they want to grade is your knowledge and your application out in the airplane. So they're not going to create an environment where it's just super stressful. They're going to try to figure out, hey, I need to know what this person knows. Yep. And if I create a very stressful or a very antagonistic check ride, I'm just going to shut them down, and they're not going to tell me anything. And what did we get out of it, right? So, so that's private, like you said, that's a big one because it's your first one.
Yeah, definitely. Appreciate that perspective. Thank you. There was another question here as it relates to, and again, it's not your airline, but I think not neither of your airlines, obviously, but I think for the industry, it definitely has a bearing on the industry, right?
Mhm.
There's definitely lots of opinions and lots of things circulating around this, and that's that merger between Frontier and Spirit.
Mm.
For folks that are not in the industry, right, we hear the news side of things, right? Spirit and
Mhm.
Frontier merge, and they kind of highlight at a high level what that means and what that looks like to us as
Mhm.
consumers and folks that fly on the airline. But there's definitely a perspective for those folks that actually work in the airline, whether
Mhm.
you're the ramp guy or you're the senior pilot, right? um,
Mhm.
and that's the perspective that not a lot of the public or us viewers have. You
Mhm.
being in the industry, you being in the airline, is there a perspective, on that merger and what that means to pilots and those folks that work in the airline, and what that means for the aviation world in general? That merger, if you know much about it.
Yeah, I know surface level, so I know
Hmm.
what I've read, I know what our company has put out,
Hmm.
and just kind of industry news.
Right.
You're seeing a lot of consolidation in the industry. I love business. I'm very entrepreneurial. I love seeing the business side of things,
Yeah.
and I think uh, with that merger, there's consolidation going on in the airline world, and
Hmm.
also in the business aviation world. I'm very in tune to that, and I love reading up. Wheels Up just purchased one of the companies out here in Scottsdale
Okay.
um, as a part of their consolidation. So I think in the
Gotcha.
industry, there's going to be a lot of consolidation. And this is speculation on my part,
Hmm.
is pilots are becoming very scarce, a scarce resource right now to grow an airline. You can't grow an airline without pilots or flight
Right.
attendants or rampers. Another good way to increase your business and to scale would be to acquire another business. And in the case of Frontier and Spirit, I I would guess that that was part of the decision making on that
Gotcha.
process.
Yep.
Was what a way to grow our business than to already purchase another business that's fully up and running and then integrate that in together. Now, the integration portion is going to be the challenging part for any business, right? So you've got two companies that were pretty much the same size and scale, I believe.
Yep.
Trying to merge those in, you've got different cultures at those different businesses and, different ways of doing things. Even though we all fly airplanes, believe it or not, every airline flies an airplane, the same airplane differently, just minor
Yeah.
differences.
Yeah.
But, it's just learning that stuff. Corporate culture is huge, trying to
Hmm.
retain, that good corporate value, that good culture within your corporation. That's going to be a challenge as well. So with any merger, and not just in the airlines, any business merger, it's a challenge. So I think as far as the consumer goes, you're going to see a little bit. Any consolidation has the potential of raising prices, especially when those two airlines were overlapping quite a bit on one
R-
route structure, maybe.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and if there isn't a whole lot of choice in that route structure, you're going to see a little bit of a price increase. I would think as a
Right.
consumer, um, that's what you would see. But
Gotcha.
as far as a pilot perspective, I think it creates a lot of opportunity for those guys.
Hmm.
Two companies coming together to become a bigger company can now attack their competitors. Kind of on a united front. No
Got
pun
it.
intended.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Guys, we are on with Big Ern. Thank you for joining. If you guys got questions for Ernie, definitely put them in the chat there. There was one question. We'll get to that one in a second,
Sure.
Ernie. I do want to ask another question because I think this is one big part of the merger as well as it relates to from the pilot perspective, at least, is this whole concept of seniority. Can you kind
Correct.
of walk through, what seniority actually means in the
Yeah, sure.
airline world and kind of give our viewers a perspective on that?
Yeah, so I just had this discussion with my buddy Sam, who's a physician, and it's
Hmm.
quite different, right? So as a physician, he can leave one practice, which is what he did, and started a new practice,
Yeah.
and he started getting other physicians to come over. So their seniority at a certain practice when they come over dictates what they're going to get paid, their compensation,
Right.
and it creates value for them. So
Yep.
they can laterally move to another company and maybe even increase their their compensation package or benefits or position within the company.
Hmm.
For a pilot, that does not happen. So I've been at Southwest a little over 10 years now. If I choose to leave and I go to another company, regardless of what it is, I start at the very bottom. So I'm
Wow.
year one there. I lose all the seniority. Unlike in a physician, where I would step from a 10-year guy maybe to another 10-year person
Right.
in another hospital, that doesn't work the same in the airlines. That's why we always say seniority is everything. So,
Yeah.
get to the airline that you want to be at, not just any airline, the
Yep.
airline that you really want to be at as fast as possible, because that dictates your long-term, longevity as far as compensation, retirement, upgrade, all that stuff. So
Yep.
it's a very big deal. Now, when you're trying to, well, we talked about the Frontier and Spirit, as you merge those in, there's going to be seniority issues with that. They try to figure out, um, there's all the different sides, right? There's the company side, there's the Frontier pilot side, there's the Spirit pilot side, and how do they merge that all into one acceptable seniority list?
Yeah.
You know,
It's a
and
challenge, I
you're
bet.
It's a challenge, and you're not going to please everybody.
Hmm.
The company has to look at the business aspect of it.
Right.
The pilots have to look at, hey, I have to provide food, for my family, and
Yep.
career expectations and stuff. So it's a lot to manage, and I don't envy those guys right now.
Yeah.
It's
Not at all.
it's always tough.
Indeed. All right. Makes sense. There was a question. Flight Sim 69 says, do I need a 4-year to be a pilot? I'm only doing 2 years and ATP. Question from 69. So I know Delta recently waived their 4-year degree requirement, but general for
Correct.
industry standard is a 4-year required for most of the aviation world, or is it two
No,
year and
it's
ATP? Okay.
Yeah, 4-year degrees has started to kind of go away. It's always weighted. So, yeah, not to bring up the football thing again, but I always think of it
Right.
like a combine, right? Like the football combine. Like you may have a 4.44 340, but your
Yeah.
vertical leap is terrible, right?
Right.
They merge all those together to find out what kind of athlete you are. It's the same
Got
thing
it.
with pilots, right? So
Okay.
you may have a 4-year degree, but maybe you only have 2,500 hours. I'm just using it as an example.
Right.
Whereas someone that has 8,000 hours of flying time as a captain in
Hmm.
complex heavy airplanes or jets, but
Right.
they only have a 2-year degree. How does that rack and stack? And that's where we use technology to kind of give us the best insight that we can to produce you know a viable candidate and rack and stack them properly. And that's always that's it's a moving target
Hmm.
because the industry is moving very fast right now with qualifications and who's competitive versus who isn't. So what we don't want to do, and again, just speaking for Ernie, is lose out to somebody who could be that all-star player just because that person didn't have a 4-year
A
degree
4-year
or
degree.
that
Yeah.
person didn't have, you know, uh, 15,000 hours, right?
Right.
We've all seen it where, you have somebody that comes in and he or she is just a truly heads above their peers as far as talent and ability. So, as my job as a recruiter, my job is to go out and get that person and try
Got it.
to help recruit that person.
Okay. Makes sense. Makes sense. Guys, thank you for tuning in here. We are on with Ernie, flying with Big Ern, as you all know him. Ryan says, currently driving to United Aviate Academy at the moment from San Diego. Can I get a ride in the Green Hornet? Ryan, I think you're driving to the wrong airline, first of all.
Yeah.
um,
Should be
but
going to Falcon Field. Maybe we
you
could
should be
talk,
going to
but no.
Falcon Field, but maybe
No.
maybe Ernie can
Ryan.
work something out.
Yeah. No,
uh,
Ryan, congratulations. That's awesome. Yeah.
yeah,
Hey, I just want to see more people in the industry. So really, I would love you to come to us, but just, more people in the industry is always a good thing.
indeed, indeed. Another Cirrus question here. I think we're getting into the Cirrus part of the conversation now. That's what's going on. James says, I don't
Uh,
know if this was asked already, but thoughts on the new Cirrus color options?
yeah. I mean, you know, uh, I like the fact that there's more because
Yeah,
previously Cirrus only had like 4 colors that you can
right.
choose from, unless you went aftermarket and
Gotcha. Yeah,
repainted, or
custom.
you could
Yeah.
do there are a bunch of different things that you could possibly do, but I think paint jobs on an airplane is just, uh, I think it speaks to the owner, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's
Indeed.
highly subjective to what the owner likes. And for
Right.
me, I'm a blue guy and I'm a green guy. I love
Yeah.
blue and green, and green was a little different. And actually, I blame Sam on that one. Sam was the one that kind of
That's
pushed it.
nice.
But
I like it.
I do. I don't tell him often, but he's right a lot of the times.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think one of the new colors I like with Cirrus, I think it's Himalayan salt or something to that.
Himalayan
Yeah.
salt, yeah,
That
that's
one's
a
really
really
nice as
really
well.
neat one.
You
Yeah.
know. Uh, Sticking with Cirrus here, there was another question. Thoughts about using the SR22 for 135 ops on the side? Have you ever given that any thought?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of one of those things where, our airplane's like our baby. It's like
Yeah,
you don't
it's
want
yeah,
to you don't want to put it somewhere where it gets used a tremendous amount, but
yeah,
I absolutely see the value in putting in a Part 135 company. It really does offset your costs. It's not going to pay for the airplane, but if you can reduce your cost as far as hangar insurance, some of the
hmm
maintenance items on there, um, yeah, but 135 is a good option for some people. I wouldn't say for everybody.
right. Yeah, no, it's tough. Even the lease back, aspect. I'm currently looking to buy a plane as well, and one of the options on the table, get one and do a lease back. And I'm just like, do I really want a bunch of folks flying my airplane? It's
Yeah,
definitely tough. It's definitely tough. Um,
yeah.
But speaking of the Cirrus, what's next for you guys? I mean, do you guys continue to you want to continue to fly the SR22, or are you guys looking to upgrade to probably something else, maybe even a light jet? What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, again, I'm always looking for business aspects, and I love business aviation. It's
Hmm.
been kind of a passion. I spent 5 years, 6 years flying a Citation 10, and then another
Oh,
two
nice.
years at a fractional. So I love the business aspect of private aviation. Um, but I love the Cirrus tremendously. It's such a great airplane, and
Yeah,
I would hope to keep the Cirrus for a while.
got it.
Um, but in terms of business, there's a personal side and a business aspect to the Cirrus, of course. But I think as you move up into some of those turbine airplanes, whether it's a turboprop or a jet,
Hmm.
you really have to look at kind of your business sustain something like that, because that
Right.
is a high cost barrier to get into and operate.
Yep, yep. No, makes sense. I would, the Cirrus is my favorite GA aircraft, so I appreciate that you guys are planning to keep that for a little while longer. I
Yeah,
love the Cirrus.
yeah. Oh, Sam's rolling right into his instrument, so he's gonna get his instrument
Awesome,
in that thing too. So
awesome,
we'll have it a little bit longer.
great. That's awesome. Nick Lane says, when hiring, would you rather have someone that has flown more aircrafts or has more piloting command time? So I guess he's talking about the variability in aircraft, or just someone who has a ton of time.
No, that's a great question. Thanks for your question, Nick. Again, it varies, right? It's what else is in your resume.
Mhm.
Or have you been, what kind of airplanes have you flown? Have you flown, heavy jets, or were you a pilot in command of another airplane? It really, for us, and I'm speaking broadly, your resume is kind of a peek into what you've done in your past, yes, but also kind of your motivation on why you chose what you chose. Did you choose a lateral career move, or
Mhm.
did you choose something, maybe you were flying a CRJ and you had the opportunity to fly an Airbus? Maybe it's right seat to right seat, and I think that's kind of the gist of the question.
Yep.
But we valued leadership at our company. So the way you can get leadership in an airplane is by being the captain, right? Even though the first officer has a leadership role, the captain is ultimately in charge, and that's really spoke to us highly, and to a lot of companies that go out and hiring. They want to hire future captains. So the
Got it.
best way to see how you performed as a captain is to have some captain time and be able to speak to that when you're brought in for an interview.
Gotcha.
Um, kind of a long round answer
No, no, it makes
it's
sense.
basically to say, Nick, it depends, right?
Yeah.
What is in your resume in the background? Do you have a lot of pilot and command time already in other jets? And would that move be viewed as a lateral move as opposed to, I've heard of some regional jet guys going from the right seat of an RJ to the right seat of a 7.4, like at Atlas, for
Wow.
instance.
Okay.
That's yeah, man, that's a kind of a cool thing to go fly the 7.4. So,
Right.
but it all depends. And again, we have technology that tries to sort all that out and rack and stack.
Oh, okay.
Um,
That's
but
interesting.
I will,
Got it.
if I were in your position, I always say that. What if I were in your position? I would think my position would be go get the PIC time first.
Got it. Makes sense. Thank you, Ernie.
Mhm.
Another question here. What is your favorite airport to fly into, or any favorite approach/departure besides Phoenix? Besides Sky Harbor.
It's always nice coming home. It's always nice coming
Oh, I
home. I will
bet.
say that. Yeah. So the favorite approach, I think, is the visual going into Washington D.C. Reagan Airport, because you
Oh,
fly basically down the river, and
yeah.
there's a
Oh, the river
point right on
visual.
the river visual,
Yeah.
and there's a point on this bridge. You have to hit certain points on your
On the
approach,
star. Yeah.
and on the bridge, the last bridge, it's a turning final turn,
Yeah.
and you're rolling out, very low right on there. So it's really cool. You don't get to sightsee much when you're the pilot flying on that,
Right.
and even
Right.
when you're a pilot not flying, you're trying to watch the guy that's flying and make sure that he's on track and everything's good. You maybe take a peek a little bit to see the Capitol and all that good stuff, but
Right.
that's a really cool approach. And then I love taking the Cirrus to Sedona. It's probably my favorite place to
Oh
go.
yeah, I love that.
It's
Yeah.
just beautiful red rock everywhere, and
Hmm.
it's fun to fly. So I think in the Cirrus, Sedona is probably my top.
Awesome. See, that's a perfect answer. You gave an airline answer as well as a GA answer.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
going back to flights, there are a ton of folks out here who have shot that river visual, and I mean spot on,
Yeah.
following the
Mm.
star, following going right. What is that 1-9? I think into DCA off the river visual.
I think it's
1-9.
1-9. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're right. That turn, even in the sim, it gets folks, right? Because
Yeah.
you either overshoot or you undershoot, and then you find
Mhm.
yourself in trouble. There's not a lot of time to correct.
There's not a lot of time, man.
But yeah, that is awesome. Chief says, nice river visual. Yeah, everyone loves that approach.
Yep.
Uh, awesome. Orlando AV Geek, what are some of the most important things to factor in when trying to decide which airline to fly/apply for?
um, yeah, as I advise my daughter on, she's getting to the time where she's starting to look at some of these airlines to apply to.
Hmm.
Um, and I use airline. Don't discount like some of the fractional operators as well. I have had some of my best times flying, business jets, because it's different, and you learn a ton because you're doing most of the work to flight plan and weight and balance and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I find my time in business aviation to be very valuable, to where I'm at right now. But in any case, definitely do your research on the company. You want to make sure that the company is kind of sound. Find out what their values are. Do they align with your values? Find out their leadership structure.
Hmm.
Who, if you have an issue, who do you go to, and how are they? You hear there's tons of um, chat rooms, and there's a lot of information out there to really gauge what a company's culture is like, because regardless if you're just starting out, you want to go to a place that truly respects you, respects the value that you give the company, and in return, they support you with all the tools and training and everything you need to be the safe, competent pilot that you are. So I would really focus on those aspects when choosing a company, even if it's your quote unquote stepping stone to a bigger company.
Right.
A lot of companies don't mind that. They want you to come in, get your experience, but while you're there, work hard for them. Be that best pilot that you can, go above and beyond. And then when it's time to leave, and when I make phone calls to go, hey, how was this person at your company? Were they, a good employee? We get the, oh, outstanding employee, above and beyond, would do anything for us, just hardworking. Those are the kind of feedback that we look for when we do kind of evaluation on whether or not we hire somebody. So
Gotcha.
choosing the right company and then being that best employee you can for that company, regardless if you're moving on or not.
Gotcha. There's a lot of consistency in your answers as it relates to the career and whatnot. And I think, that consistency is, it's not just one aspect that you all are looking for, right? It's what makes up this whole pilot, right? Are you a
Correct.
good cultural fit? What's your background? What levels of education have you achieved, right? It's not just you've got the hours, you've got the
Mhm.
qualifications, and you're hired. There's lots of different variables that
Yeah.
go into it. It makes sense.
And that's really a big some people don't understand that. That's like, hey, this person has 10,000 hours and can get hired. Well, okay, well, let's dig into his background
Right.
and find out why. It's especially companies are looking for a good employee in terms of skill set, right? Like they want to make sure that you're a safe pilot in our work group, safe, competent, and skilled pilot. But they
Yep.
also need to know that you're going to get along with the rest of your employees,
Right.
and they don't need somebody who may be, Maverick in the airplane and can fly anything,
Yeah,
but can't
exactly.
get along with his first officer or his flight attendants or anything like
Right.
that. So those are big things, and that's what can kill a culture in a company. So
Yep.
that's why we're very, you know, very picky when and all companies are like this. They're very picky when they start hiring people
Yep.
because you hire one bad apple and that can metastasize to other work groups. And
Absolutely.
so, humble and hungry, right? I
Yep.
always say that. You got to be humble, you got to be hungry, and it's a team sport. So,
Awesome. Oh my gosh, it's an hour already, guys. This has been fantastic.
wow, that flew by
Time
quick.
has flown. Oh man, I think we've got time for maybe one or two more questions. And then, as you all know, Ernie is very busy, so I do appreciate you taking the time to sit
Of
with us
course.
here today. Mountain says, "Do you feel like the current cost for pilot training is hurting the industry?"
Um, the short answer is yes. There's always been that cost barrier to entry for our industry. It's expensive to train a pilot and the costs are going up. You look at the cost of oil this morning was above
Yeah.
$104 a barrel, I think
Yep.
114. That's going to have an impact not
Mhm.
only in the airline world, but in the flight training world as well.
Yep.
Everything gets more expensive. So yeah, that's a big cost. The cost to entry is a big barrier for a lot of people. Um, a lot of schools are trying to work with banks to try to
Yes.
come up with cost-effective solutions to provide flight training. So someone could come in. Usually, it was typically Part 141 schools only.
Right.
There are a few schools. I know Sierra Charlie out here in Scottsdale have been working very hard on getting a Part 91 training program approved for financial aid. So,
Yep.
and I'm sure a lot more schools around the country are doing that as well. But it's a very high cost, but you have to remember physicians have the same cost to get to where they're at. I
Yeah.
use that because my best friend's a physician. So he talks about, like, we talk about the differences and the similarities between our careers.
Hmm.
And, a doctor will take out hundreds of $1,000s in loans
Right.
and pay it off for a very long time.
Yep.
In the aviation world, 120,000 I think is about average right now for if you go through one of these big programs
Yep.
to get your ratings. Um, and with the quote unquote shortage, I'll use it, of pilots coming up,
Yeah.
that the compensation package is going to be that you're making an investment into your future, and you're going to be able to recoup that cost, with hopefully a 20-year, 30-year airline career.
Career. Yep.
Um, so
Nope.
it's an investment in yourself. But the cost, yeah, I would agree that the cost is a major factor in folks not coming to the airline industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And the availability of, like you just mentioned, being able to get loans for it,
Mhm.
or it's been tough traditionally. To your point, it's only been part 141, or if you went the university route, but there are more and more, organizations out there. AOPA, I know they offer
Mhm.
scholarships as well. So there are opportunities out there, guys, for those that are looking to, pursue an aviation career or just your private pilot in general.
Mhm.
Don't let it's hard it's easy to sit here and say it because it happened to me.
Mhm.
There were a couple false starts and stops, but don't let costs kind of be the factor to holding you back to pursuing your dream and what you actually really
Mhm.
want to do. um so
And I will say that it's very it's hard to tell somebody, yeah, I know it's expensive, but you just do what you got to do to make it happen, right? It's hard to do that, but at the flip side of that, if you really want it, you are going to find a way to make that happen. I was very blessed. I had my parents help me out a lot on my flight training, but we didn't come from a lot of money. It was difficult, and I didn't want to see my parents working, their tail off to put me through school. So I got a job bagging groceries
yeah.
and at the base, and I worked for tips. And I remember $37 was what got me 1 hour of flight time in a Cessna 152. So
Wow.
I would try to make at least $37 every day to try
Yeah,
to
to get
help
an hour.
help in that process.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
no,
there's
that's
there's
awesome.
ways. If you want it bad enough, you'll figure it
You'll
out. You'll
figure out how
find a
to
way.
get it done. Absolutely. All right, last question here. We've got to let Ernie go. Fly with Rookie. This is a cool one because as a Tesla owner, I love it. I remember when you got yours, I had to
Oh
shout
yeah.
you out and reach out and say congrats. But he says big shout out to the Close Traffic Podcast and also Big Ern. This is absolutely amazing to witness. But let's talk about Tesla, Big Ern. Tell us why you purchased it and what model.
Yes. So I purchased a Tesla Model 3 dual motor. So kind of I guess it's the middle one. I didn't get the performance, but I get the mid range one. And it was great. I've always heard from my buddies who are Tesla owners that it's almost like cult like, right? Like they love their Tesla, and you're like, really, is that good? And
Yeah.
I can say by having owned it now, I think maybe 2, 3 months, it is the best car I've ever owned.
Oh yeah.
It's great not having to worry about the gas prices right now, as they're
Yep.
increasing.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
I tried a supercharger for the first time, I think a week ago,
Uh huh.
and it was just I parked, I plugged it in, I went and got a cup of coffee, and I came back, and it was
Charged.
it was charged up.
Nothing to it.
So
Yeah.
it was all pretty new, but I love the technology in there, and I love the speed and the peppiness in it.
Hmm.
Getting up to speed really quick. It's gonna get me in trouble. I could already say that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. Uh,
it's amazing. Thumbs up. Go buy one.
Thumbs up. Yes. There you go, guys. It's not just me. Johnny, if
Yes.
Johnny was on, he would have probably he loves to make fun of me owning a Tesla. He probably
Yeah.
would have started that in the introduction. So see, Johnny, it's not just me. Go get you
Uh,
one.
yep.
Anyways, Ernie, this has been fantastic. You're a busy guy. I appreciate you taking the time, the community. I know thoroughly enjoyed this. I appreciate you answering our questions and the
Yeah.
questions in the chat. We'll love to have you on again sometime in the near future for sure.
I
But
would love to. I would love
awesome.
to be on. One thing before I end, I do
Yes.
want to do like kind of like a call to action.
Yes.
Um, Up in UND, a few months ago, there was an accident involving John Hauser, and
Okay.
as we peeled back the causal factors of that, he was suffering from a lot of mental anguish. And
Mm,
for me, I want to use my platform for helping others. Obviously, getting into the aviation career field, but also, that having a daughter that's up there, it kind of hit me pretty
right.
hard. I wrote it down. One of his last wishes was, if you could do anything for me, try to change the FAA rules so that other young pilots don't have to go through what I went through. And I get choked up even reading it.
Yeah.
Flight training is extremely difficult already to begin with. And I think there's a lot of stress that goes in, especially amongst a lot of these flight schools where you have the pressure to perform. And I think there needs to be an outlet for, these young professionals to talk to somebody. And, I don't know what I can do, but I know I need to do something in that space to
Hmm.
make sure that, our young professionals that are coming up to fly airplanes have that avenue to reach out when they need help and not have any kind of retribution
Yeah.
or any kind of negative stigma attached to it. Because, this is how we get through it. I got through flight training with the help of my brothers and sisters that were around me. So,
Right.
I just think that's a big thing that we all as a group need to tackle and to face and to affect some change. So,
Yep.
anyways, I just wanted
No,
to add that out there.
that is spot on. And for those that, are in the chat, that don't understand the context too much, having, how to put this nicely, but struggling with mental issues or challenges is really looked down upon at the FAA level and at the medical level. There really isn't an outlet today for pilots to go to be able to get treatment for that without impacting their ticket, unfortunately, at any level, from the private all the way up. So that's what Ernie is talking about, and us as a community and those that are involved in aviation and have this love for aviation and this passion for aviation can look at finding ways to influence that for it to be better, because there are too many stories out there like that one for sure. There are not a lot of folks that come forward and get the proper help that they need, unfortunately, because of fear of losing what they worked their whole life for many people so hard. So thank you, Ernie, for bringing that up. And there's definitely things that we can do on our part as well. If there are any, actionable things that we can do as well, whether it's, letters that we need to write, or if you've got, a fundraiser or whatever it is, definitely, contact us, let us know, and we'll
Yeah.
definitely share that amongst the community.
All right.
All right.
Perfect.
All right,
Well, thank
guys.
you, man.
Appreciate it. Thank you all for joining. I'm going to count us out here. You all be well, take care, and as we always say, keep the blue side up. We'll see ya.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.
I get to it first, I got you mad. I guess that when I get to it last. Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. I get to it first, I got you mad. I guess that when I get to it last. Get it that I'm never going back. Get it that I'm never going back. Going up, going up, going up, going up, going up, going up. Get it that I'm never going up, going up, going up, going up, going up.